It's Game Boy World, and this is some kind of fresh hell. When I took on the Game Boy World project, I knew there would be some rocky moments, especially when it came to Japanese imports. Pachinko games, horse racing gambling sims, kanji tutors, some things I'll just have to suffer through. But nothing could have prepared me for the hellish rabbit hole of Gundam spin-offs. SD Gundam, SD Sengokuden, Kunitori Monogatari isn't so much the threshold to a world of human suffering, this is deep pain immersion. We all know the story in which the God of the Hebrews promised to Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the grains of sand on the beach. Less frequently told is the corollary to that tale. God looked over to Bandai and said, "Oh, and your Gundam games will be too." Bandai published half a dozen Gundam games on Game Boy, which honestly isn't as bad as it could have been, given the sheer numbers that appeared on Famicom and every PlayStation platform. Thankfully, they cut their efforts short as the Game Boy began to wane in 1994 and shifted their portable efforts to their own WonderSwan platform. Unfortunately, that's still 6 Gundam games I have to deal with. It's not that there's anything particularly wrong with Gundam. Clearly, it must be pretty good if it's launched such a crazy media empire, and literally hundreds of games. But the series is not putting its best foot forward here on Game Boy. Kunitori Monogatari is not Gundam in the strictest sense. No, it's SD Gundam, the cutesy parody spin-off. Think Gundam Babies. And even then, Kunitori Monogatari isn't just SD Gundam, it's part of the SD Sengokuden spin-off. Yes, a spin-off of a spin-off, which inexplicably sets these midget mobile suits in the Warring States period of Japanese history. Here, mecha, or perhaps robots, since in this context the mobile suits seem to have functional eyeballs rather than camera lenses, stand in for historical personages, such as Tokugawa Ieyasu and Oda Nobunaga, I guess. What sense this is supposed to make, I'm not entirely certain, but I would assume Commodore Perry has a nasty surprise in store for him a few centuries down the line. It's also worth noting that this is SD Gundam Sengokuden, which is not to be mistaken for SD Gundam Sangokuden, which is a real thing that also exists. Sengoku, of course, is the Japanese Warring States era, while Sangoku refers to the Three Kingdoms era of China. Turns out there were a lot of chibi mobile suits in classical Asia. The SD Sengokuden games, of which there were 3 between 1990 and 92, approached the Gundam license from a sort of brain-dead strategy angle. You pick a battlefield and a side, and then claim territory on the map in a semi-real-time format. Eventually, your current mech hero goes head-to-head with the enemy mech, and these battles play out like the crappiest fighting game ever. You and your opponents run around in a side-scrolling perspective, mashing the attack button and jumping sloppily until one character's life bar runs out. It is terrible amateurish game design. It is anti-fun. It is a dreadful beginning for Gundam on Game Boy. As is customary for the platform, Kunitori Monogatari does offer a link cable mode. This is a great idea for anyone eager to destroy their friendships. Now to be fair, things improved considerably with SD Gundam Sengokuden 2 Tenka Toitsuhen, which launched nearly 2 years later and brought with it a considerably less trashy sense of design, greatly revamping the field and battle mechanics. By the time the series came to an end a few months later, with SD Gundam SD Sengokuden 3 Chijo Saikyohen, the Sengokuden sub franchise actually seemed like something that might be kind of fun. Sadly, the sequels are a long way away. Here in 1990, there's just Kunitori Monogatari, which kind of makes me hate SD Gundam, anime, Game Boy, and the planet Earth in general. Suddenly, I really get that dude who tried to destroy the planet by dropping a space colony on it. I've been unable to dig up any information on who developed Kunitori Monogatari, so my guess is Tosei. For one thing, Tosei is known to have developed a number of Gundam titles. Also, given Tosei's long history with publisher Bandai, their tendency to go uncredited in their works, and the wildly variable quality of their output, yeah, Kunitori Monogatari has Tosei written all over it. In any case, whoever created the Game Boy debut of SD Gundam did a terrible job of it and should feel ashamed. According to the Game Developer Research Institute, a studio called Mike appears to have worked on the Sengokuden sequels. Though none of the same staff worked on this game, Mike may in fact simply have been responsible for those games' graphics, but either way, the change in staff would definitely account for why this chapter of the series is so much worse than its successors. Someone clearly got sacked for this abomination. I'd like to say Kunitori Monogatari is an anomaly, but I wouldn't want to lie. There are plenty of terrible anime licensed games to come here on Game Boy World. So for more journeys into human despair, keep reading GameBoyWorld.com. Please support this project on Patreon or by buying the book. And hey, if you're really cool, you could subscribe to this channel. Next time, we'll be looking at a card game you've never heard of.